So my name is Euan Graham. I'm a Shangri-La Senior Fellow, and I cover Indo-Pacific Defense and Strategy here for the IISS. Welcome to this special session, which is on the challenges of Asia-Pacific military capability development. And across the Asia-Pacific, different nations are pursuing military modernization to meet a wide range of security challenges, but they are doing so at different speeds and with different resource levels, as one might expect of such a diverse region. Recent increases in defense spending by some regional governments, but not all, could create capability gaps between partners, creating challenges for cooperation, perhaps a theme that our speakers might consider taking up. Meantime, different military branches, including in areas like coast guards, often face quite different capability development paths. This special session provides an opportunity to discuss those challenges in capability development, from conventional defense to tackling non-state threats, humanitarian assistance, and disaster relief operations. Before I turn to my first panelist, could I just ask those of you, as we are using a queued speaker system for this session, to just look at the instructions in front of you and make sure that you insert your cards, please, chip down to the right in the console in front of you. For those of you who do not have access to a microphone, if you could gain my attention, we'll make sure that we get a runner out to you so that you have a chance to ask your questions. I'm very happy that we have a distinguished panel of four speakers with us, and we will run in the following order, led by General Andres Centino, the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, General Angus Campbell, the Chief of the Defence Force from Australia, General Yoshihide, Chief of Staff of the Joint Staff of the Japan Self-Defense Forces, and Admiral Fagan, the Commandant of the US Coast Guard. I'd just like to underline that we will have a hard stop in this session at 6:15, just to give all of you participants the chance to refresh ahead of our reception. But that will still allow, I think, plenty of time for a vibrant question and answer session. So without further delay, I'd like to turn to General Centino, please, for your preparatory comments.
Distinguished participants of this dialogue, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I take this opportunity to express my gratitude to share our views on the challenges of Asia-Pacific military capability development from the perspective of the Philippines, in my capacity as the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. The ever-evolving security landscape in the region calls for a deep understanding of the developing challenges and opportunities presented by new military capabilities. It is indeed important that we recognize the role that changing capabilities play in the various aspects of Asia-Pacific security. The Philippines, like most nations in the region, has witnessed developments in the external security environment, and these developments have brought about a fundamental shift in our appreciation of security threats and the conduct of warfare. As a result, our military modernization priorities have shifted to recalibrate the focus of the armed forces of the Philippines from internal security towards external defense, particularly maritime security and the fast-developing technological advancements. We understand that a robust and capable military is not only essential for our own national security, but also crucial for maintaining stability and peace in the Asia-Pacific. In our modernization program, we have identified maritime security and integration of fast-developing technological advancements as integral to the AFP moving forward. The Philippines is an archipelago with vast maritime territories making it an imperative to strengthen our capabilities to safeguard our waters, protect our marine resources, preserve our sovereignty, and defend our sovereign rights. The rapid or fast pace of technological advancement demands that we keep up with emerging trends and harness cutting-edge technologies to enhance our capabilities. And in light of this, there is a need to enhance our acquisition and development procedures or processes to optimize the operational leverage of new technologies. Amidst the challenges, we also see opportunities such as the dynamic impact of state partnerships, both formal and informal, with allies and partners in the region. Because the challenges we face are not limited to the Philippines alone. And since these threats transcend borders, we have to strengthen regional defense mechanisms and promote cooperation in order for us to collectively respond to shared security concerns. By strengthening regional frameworks and partnerships, we will facilitate the sharing of information, intelligence, and even best practices. Another opportunity that we must explore are the advancements in technology and cutting-edge solutions, which can help us to fast-track our shift to territorial defense. The rapid growth of digitalization, cyber capabilities, unmanned systems, and weapon systems provides avenues for enhancing our defense capabilities while optimizing resource allocation, since this new system or new systems require substantial resources that may adversely affect other key priorities. The emergence of new technologies and capabilities impacts various aspects of security, including deterrence, crisis management, and regional cooperation. As countries in the region enhance their military capabilities, it becomes essential to foster transparency, build trust, and engage in meaningful dialogue to prevent miscalculations and unintended escalations. It is vital for our countries and our militaries in the region to utilize various platforms and fora to provide avenues for dialogue, confidence-building measures, and the development of practical cooperation in areas of mutual concern, including maritime security, counterterrorism, and even disaster response. Through open dialogue and cooperation, our nations can enhance understanding, build and solidify trust, and work towards collective security objectives. In our pursuit of enhanced military capabilities, there is the overarching dimension of our commitment to regional cooperation, and we honor long-standing partnerships and work to achieve the shared goals for regional peace and security. The Philippines and its armed forces is committed to contribute in proactively addressing these challenges and capitalizing on the opportunities that arise with the end goal of developing a capable and resilient military force that contributes to the stability, peace, and prosperity of the Asia-Pacific region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, General Centino. I think you've ably demonstrated from the Philippines' perspective the broad range of security challenges which have to be met through the capability available to the armed forces. And you also, I think, suitably underline the importance of leveraging new technology and state partnerships. We will now turn to the second speaker, Australia's Chief of Defence Force, General Angus Campbell.
Thank you very much, and fellow chiefs, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Our region is being reshaped. A range of new military capabilities are proliferating in the Indo-Pacific, including stealthy, long-range, high-speed weapons, sophisticated sensors, automatic and autonomous systems, modern warships, growing numbers of advanced submarines, and cutting-edge strike capabilities. Additionally, the use of coercive statecraft, lawfare, militarisation of disputed features, and influence operations in the grey zone between peace and war are undermining traditional understandings of the international rules-based order. It is clear that we now live in an era and a region of great power competition, an era that I expect will last for some time. In these challenging strategic circumstances, Australia does not question the right of any nation to modernise its military capabilities. But large-scale military modernisation efforts must be transparent, engage with arms control architecture, and be accompanied by statecraft that reassures. Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine clearly demonstrates the dangers of an unmatched, opaque military build-up. That conflict also highlights the importance of resilient supply chains and a scalable defence industrial base to support dynamic capability acquisition. Australia's efforts to strengthen its defence capabilities are a prudent response to what we see as a rapidly changing strategic environment. We are seeking to be open, transparent and reassuring about our plans, and will continue to do so, and indeed call on all regional nations, whether great, middle or small powers, to do the same. Our efforts aim to field a force that promotes, supports and upholds a sustainable balance of power that constrains the appetites of all who would seek to use force to achieve their aims. As imperfect as it may be, an order predicated on the rule of law is always worth striving for. In its absence exists a hierarchy of power in which middling and small nations fall victim to the predations of others more powerful than themselves, a point vividly borne out by current events in Ukraine. The rule of power over the rule of law is not an idea that Australia wishes to see succeed, whether here in the Indo-Pacific or in Europe. That's why Australia sees deterrence delivered through strong partnerships as well as enhanced defence capabilities as essential for reducing the likelihood of conflict in our region. Australia remains committed to working with partners to build and defend a region that is peaceful, prosperous, places ASEAN at its core, respects sovereignty and operates by agreed rules. What then are the challenges and opportunities presented by this increased effort in capability development across the region as viewed from Australia? As an island nation bound by 3 oceans and one that largely depends on a range of just-in-time imports, Australia is extremely sensitive to changes in international supply chains. This reality was starkly illustrated during the COVID-19 pandemic and more recently by the Russo-Ukrainian conflict, when the delivery of essential goods and services were severely impacted. As you know, sophisticated military technologies are often constructed with unique and complex components. Most countries, including Australia, do not possess many of these components in large quantities, nor do we currently possess the industrial capacity to manufacture them. This creates significant dependencies that must be reliable when the defence of sovereignty and national interest is at stake. Given their inherent complexity and sophistication, many new capabilities are also very expensive. The global economic downturn we're currently experiencing impacts the ability of many nations to purchase advanced systems and components in sufficient quantities and within required timeframes. A constrained fiscal environment also limits the amount available to be spent on research and development or on preparedness. $1 for today or $1 for tomorrow, but not both. The sheer speed of technological innovation occurring at rates unprecedented in human history also generates significant challenges. This can fuel anxiety as states are under increasing pressure to enhance their respective capabilities to ensure they do not feel that they are falling behind competitors. While the challenges are many, the range of opportunities also present themselves. The prohibitive costs associated with the development of sophisticated military capabilities encourages deeper collaboration with like-minded partners and allies. AUKUS, the arrangement between the United States, United Kingdom and Australia, is just one example. Deepening collaboration with allies and partners to design interoperability and indeed interchangeability into technologies from the outset not only reduces development and procurement costs, but strengthens combined warfighting capability. This also allows nations to generate capability at a higher rate than might otherwise be possible, enhances market efficiencies, increases supply chain resilience, and decreases strategic dependencies. In response to the significant speed of technological development, governments are seeking to minimise bureaucratic red tape and are indicating a willingness to accept higher levels of managed risk. This can give confidence to research agencies and private industry alike to develop, test and adjust novel capabilities and technologies and to pursue retaining or obtaining relative military advantage. Further, many of these new capabilities, particularly those with increased autonomy, afford nations with smaller populations such as Australia with unique opportunities to generate mass. They allow us to thicken up the effects we seek to generate, to increase lethality, while possibly reducing the risk to our people. At the heart of all this is the matter of trust, which my colleague General Centino also noted. In our institutions, in our partnerships with other countries, with industry, and ultimately with our citizens, trust is the coin of the realm. It takes years to grow and moments to lose. In this regard, trust, Australia entered into a trilateral partnership to deepen practical security technology cooperation with the United States and the United Kingdom. Under AUKUS, as you know, Australia is seeking to acquire a conventionally armed nuclear-powered submarine. Beyond nuclear-powered submarines, AUKUS also gives an opportunity to see the accelerated development of other advanced capabilities and technologies. This for us is a prudent response to the strategic circumstances we face and continues and contributes to a sustainable balance of power in our region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, General Campbell, for giving us an Australian view of the region and then bringing it towards a view of how Australia has approached its own challenges in capability development during an extremely active year, I think, as everyone will be aware, with major initiatives such as the Defence Strategic Review and also AUKUS, which I'm sure will feature further in the discussion phase. Our third speaker to my left is General Yoshida, the Chief of Staff of the Joint Staff of the Japan Self-Defense Forces. General Yoshida.
Thank you. First, I would like to thank Dr. John Chipman, Director General and the Chief Executive of the IISS, all members of IISS, and the Government of Singapore, and honorable guest for inviting me to participate in the 20th Shangri-La Dialogue. I'm truly honored to make my speech at these prestigious special sessions today. Now I'd like to talk about the theme, Challenges of Asia-Pacific Military Capability Development from the viewpoint of Japan. First, I refer to the implication of ongoing Russian aggression of Ukraine on the security environment of the Indo-Pacific. And then I will try to grasp the challenges we face based on the perspective of emerging military capabilities. Lastly, I introduce you Japan's effort to deal with these challenges. As we can see from the Russian invasion of Ukraine, I recognize that the international society is currently at a watershed, whether it could deny unilateral acts to change the status quo by force and maintain the international order based on the rule of law. And I have a serious concern that the international community cannot deny the possibility of a grave contingency, just like the war in Ukraine, to occur in the Indo-Pacific. In order to deter any contingency, it is important for countries in this region to come together and be united to enhance respective deterrence and response capabilities. When I examine this invasion based on the perspective of emerging military capabilities, first, I should especially point out about battles in cyber domain and application of space domain. Even though the Russian armed forces was considered overwhelmingly superior over that of Ukraine, the armed forces of Ukraine has been conducting a good fight. One of the reasons for that, in my view, is Ukraine's ability to develop clear situational awareness and the theater by leveraging capabilities in all domains. In addition, Ukraine has been tasked and required to appropriately deal with Russian information operations, including cognitive domain, to counter its invasion that utilizes its hybrid methods. The first step for any country to fight through a conflict conducted in multiple domains is to grasp the situation correctly in a timely manner. However, I can say that this developing correct and timely situational awareness itself is an extremely difficult challenge. When I reflect this challenge, I run from the contingency in Europe into the Indo-Pacific with a vast sea and numerous island regions. I can conclude that developing the situational awareness in all different domains is important, including outer space, cyber, and the cognitive domains, and the maritime domain awareness, MDA, that also provides air situational awareness. To respond to the challenge of the developing the situational awareness in all domains, the Japan Self-Defense Force is currently working on fundamentally reinforcing its defense capabilities that realize its cross-domain operations and strengthening collaboration with allies and like-minded countries. One specific example is that JSDF has been developing its Space Domain Awareness, SDA capability, that includes the grasping opponents' intents and capabilities, in addition to its Space Situational Awareness, SSA capability. Furthermore, JSDF has been promoting the introduction of unmanned aerial vehicles to enhance its maritime domain awareness capability that also covers airspace. Moreover, JSDF has been actively promoting its effort to strengthen collaboration with allies, like-minded nations, and partners through execution of defense cooperation and exchanges, including the Indo-Pacific Deployment, IPD cooperation, in capacity building programs for partner nations and the promotion of defense equipment transfer to enhance respective countries' MDA capabilities. Conclusion, in order to deny any changes to the status quo by force in the Indo-Pacific region, we must enhance our capabilities to develop situational awareness in all domains. However, no single country could achieve that by its sole effort. So close collaboration among countries in the Indo-Pacific is imperative. By making progress on cooperation with allies and partner nations for situational awareness in all domains, we can prevent an accidental conflict in peacetime. Furthermore, by enhancing our capability to develop situational awareness of the entire Indo-Pacific, the effect of deterrence by detection will also increase against any opponent that attempts to unilaterally change the status quo by force. In addition, cooperation of countries in the Indo-Pacific to develop rules for stable use of space and cyber domains will be essential for maintaining the international order based on the rule of law. This concludes my speech. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you very much, General Yoshida. Japan, I think, is also in a situation of significant change in its defense policy and the scale of defense funding, which the Japanese government has agreed to commit to that capability development process. But in common with your other speakers so far, cooperation, I think, was a very clear theme of your exposition, that the importance of a national capability is also one that depends on leveraging through partnership. Our fourth and final speaker in this session, giving us a US perspective, is Commandant Linda Fagan of the US Coast Guard. And that, I think, is also testament to the fact that in this region, maritime issues are not just salient, but also cross the boundaries of military and other non-state challenges. And I think it's refreshing to have a perspective from a service chief, but who sees things from a different perspective. Although I should say that the US Coast Guard does operate globally, and we appreciate your presence here today. Commandant Fagan, over to you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank IISS as well for the opportunity to share a few perspectives with the group. And the U.S. Coast Guard is one of the 6 armed forces of the United States. We operate as a law enforcement agency and a maritime force globally. The Indo-Pacific is a dynamic maritime region. It's critical to global economic prosperity, critical to the well-being of millions of people who live in the region. Prosperity depends on the region remaining free, open, and governed by international law. And to achieve economic security and prosperity, the region requires maritime security. Maritime security is the ability of a nation to police and maintain sovereign rights in its own waters, basic Coast Guard functions, in some cases provided by Coast Guards, in others, navies, and others, maritime police forces. Nations must be capable of exercising governance over their own maritime spaces to address the many challenges facing the region. These include pollution and marine environmental degradation, trafficking of illicit cargoes, disaster response, and responding to climate change, to name a few. The best way to deter illegal activities is through strong maritime governance. Constabulary services, whether they're called a Coast Guard, Navy, or Fisheries Service, are the best solution. Failing to counter illegal activity erodes sovereignty at sea, weakens the rule of law, and contributes to instability ashore. Maritime law enforcement capability, distinct from warfighting, contributes to sovereignty, but in different ways. And constabulary services ensure the rule of law is maintained and guarantee the sovereign rights of each country. Maritime services must be backed by a strong judiciary ashore to assure there's follow-on accountability for malign activities and behaviors. And no one nation can solve these maritime governance challenges alone. And Indo-Pacific security depends on partnership, cooperation, collaboration. And in this era of maritime problems that ripple out from the point of origin, they affect us all. The problems cross maritime boundaries, so the solutions must do the same. Bi- or multilateral partnerships help all nations build their capacity for maritime governance. And the U.S. Coast Guard has a long-standing commitment to our allies and partners in the Indo-Pacific to advance their capability through meaningful interactions. By helping provide what other nations need after careful consultation with them and scaled to the right size, we help partners build their own capacity to exercise sovereignty in their waters. Robust training engagements, subject matter exchanges, combined operations afloat are a few examples of how to help partners build capacity. And the vision is each nation would be able to govern their own waters with the appropriate tools of maritime law enforcement and resource management that are essential. The U.S. Coast Guard aims to be one of many services large and small, pursuing the same goals: a free, open Indo-Pacific that supports prosperity now and preserves maritime resources for future generations. There's three key elements to this vision. First, we must ensure the efforts of those who seek to build capacity are well coordinated and aligned with partner needs. Second, while patrol boats and aircrafts are essential, they are not the only part of the equation. Strong institutions ashore that offer legal finish to maritime law enforcement at sea are equally important. And finally, above all, we need to listen. Listen to our partners to understand their needs. It's essential we are building the capabilities that fill gaps that they identify and want to close. Again, thank you for the opportunity to participate.
Thank you, Admiral Fagan, and thank you to all of my panelists for keeping to time. That gives us, I think, a healthy amount for question and answer. Just briefly to pick up, Admiral Fagan, and your comments, as well as striking a very similar note on the importance of international cooperation and partnership, your point that maritime enforcement requires a strong and active judiciary ashore also, I think, strikes another common note about the ecosystem nationally within which defence forces operate, that cooperation is not just horizontal at the international level, but within nations as well. Whole of government has become something of a cliche, but I think that is clearly a theme that has come through strongly. So I now turn to the floor. For those of you who would like to ask a question, please make sure that you've inserted your cards and press the speaker button, which will then get my attention. I will take questions in pairs to start, and the first two off the block, Brent Sadler and Jay Tariella. Brent first.
Thank you very much. One question, the question is posed to all the members of the panel, but I think most importantly probably for General Yoshida specifically, if no one else, and that is, what specific technology or military capability has been the most disruptive to you meeting your mission sets? And I know the human element is critical. I understand the partnerships. We've heard that in all your opening comments. But that aside, I really would want to focus in on the technological capability and maybe associated concepts of operations.
Jay Tariella.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I am Coast Guard Commodore Jay Tariella from the Philippine Coast Guard. I have a question for Admiral Fagan about the operational procedures of the United States Coast Guard. Given the U.S. Coast Guard's interest in contributing to address IUUF in the region, my question is about the U.S. Coast Guard's policy on dealing with China's maritime militia, often swarming and clustering around the South China Sea to support Beijing's expansive and illegal claims. Does the U.S. Coast Guard view China's maritime militia as agents of the state and therefore sovereign immune? Or are they considered an ordinary fishing vessels subject to maritime law enforcement measures? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll come back to the panel first with those two questions, starting with General Yoshida, but just a note that General Yoshida will deliver his answer in Japanese, so please avail yourselves of the headsets and interpretation services. And then after General Yoshida has had the first answer, I'll come back to the fellow panelists for those who want to add on Brent Sadler's question, and then we'll come to the question for Admiral Fagan. General Yoshida. Disruptive. Would any other of our panelists like to take that on? General Campbell.
Thanks for the question. You could say there are many. I'll offer a few, some of which General Yoshida has mentioned, but this is in no way a complete view. Clearly, cyber has created a ubiquitous, global, instantaneous attack platform. Space is now, the effects that we realise from space are now so deeply embedded across so much of our entire society and economy that it is both a wonderful advance and a vulnerability. As General Yoshida mentioned, artificial intelligence is perhaps only in its infancy, but has extraordinary disruptive potential. And the one I'd finally add is missile technology, but not missiles, but rather the wide variety, diversity, and lethality and precision of modern missiles. Are we talking cruise, ballistic, manoeuvring ballistic, hypersonic glide, hypersonic cruise? It just goes on, creating real challenges in targeting. Even to the point of the news reports of a few years ago of fractional orbital bombardment systems. That is very strategically destabilising. Thank you.
Thank you for that. General Centino, would you like to add anything?
Just to add, cyber is one of the new domains that maybe, as I've said, quite new to some countries, and some countries in the region have already experienced cyber attacks, not just militarily, but in several sectors, in transportation, in businesses. And this is one disruptive phenomenon that we have to address. And that's where we see one potential problem if we are not able to address properly.
Thank you. Admiral Fagan, you had a direct Coast Guard to Coast Guard interaction from our Philippine friend Jay Tariella on how the United States Coast Guard treats the so-called Chinese maritime militia. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. And vessels who operating at sea have an obligation to adhere to the rule of law and conduct operations safely, consistent with the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. And our view on all vessels is that those operations should be consistent with the norms and patterns of maritime operations. As we operate in the Indo-Pacific with regard to working with partner nations to counter IUU fishing, illegal, unregulated, unreported fishing, we work collaboratively and in a number of instances utilizing bilateral agreements that bring our Coast Guard ship in alignment with a nation's authorities and technical expertise to enforce their own fisheries laws within their EEZs, and the bilateral helps bring that partnership together. IUU fishing is theft, and left unchecked, it erodes the law, the rule of law. And creating a network to counter the illegal activity is critical. So regional fisheries management organizations help bring some of that network into focus. Creating at-sea presence for enforcement capacity is critical as well. And as I mentioned in my opening remarks, ensuring that there are legal regimes in place to create consequences with regard to that illegal activity. Thank you.
Next pair of questions, Justin Bakisal and Tarashini Krishnan. Justin first.
Thank you. Justin from the Philippines. This question is for General Centino, sir. A few weeks back, the Chinese Foreign Ministry made a statement in response to the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, saying that ASEAN should convince individual member states to try to restrain members from individually doing defense agreements that potentially destabilize the region. So my question is two-pronged. How does the Philippines reconcile balancing ASEAN centrality on the one hand and a foreign policy that fundamentally brings in non-ASEAN partners in the region, such as Australia, the US, and Japan? And then secondly, perhaps if you could clear the issue for everybody, how determined is Manila to continue with this approach, even perhaps against the protests of some countries? Thank you.
Just pause there and we'll take the second question from Tarashini Krishnan.
I have two questions here. My first one is to General Centino. As you know, the South China Sea issue is a major concern for all ASEAN members, be it claimant or non-claimant states. At the ASEAN level, we have many existing mechanisms in order to manage the issue. Do you think it's sufficient or more needs to be done at the ASEAN level? That's my first question. My second question is to Madam Fagan. Based on your experience in the Coast Guard, how do you see states can actually overcome, the cultural differences between uniform bodies in implementing interagency cooperation? Thank you.
All right, thank you. General Centino, you had two questions put to you if you want to take them together.
Thank you for the question. The first question raised is as regards to the agreement that we have with other countries, and one of the things that is hotly debated or being talked about is the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement that we have with the United States. Let me just put this in a proper perspective. We have the Mutual Defense Treaty signed years ago, so several years already, and we're just ensuring that the provisions of this treaty are being implemented. And to make sure that this defense treaty is indeed implemented, we have also other accompanying agreements like the Visiting Forces Agreement, the Integrated Logistics Support Agreement, and now the EDGA. We are doing this because it's an obligation that any sovereign and well-meaning country would do to an ally, to a partner. And we are implementing this Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. For one, it is needed for the defense, as the term has mentioned, defense cooperation. It is intended to strengthen our capability to defend. And we're doing exercises, joint exercises with allies to make sure that we are prepared to defend. You mentioned also about how intent is Manila, despite the protest that, the protest has been brought out by perhaps the lack of proper information that needs to be done. I mean, there is a need really to educate the stakeholders to ensure that such agreements that we enter with our allies are indeed for the defense of the country. So that's my answer to your question. The second question about what needs to be done in the situation in the South China Sea among the Asian countries. Well, for one, as I have stated earlier, there's a need really for cooperation among like-minded countries. We have yet to establish a code of conduct among Asian countries, and that has been that has yet to be solidified for the past years. We tried to make it a common ground among Asian countries so that we can be stronger in our actions and our posture as regards to what's happening in the South China Sea. So I think one thing that ASEAN countries should really push for is the signing of the Code of Conduct. Thank you.
Admiral Fagan, on the question of the different learning experiences of the USSG.
Yes, so as you consider, in the context as we're talking here, that many, maritime and governance challenges in the region, and we each represent different organizations and different countries, and the system with which we actively counter those challenges look very different nation to nation, and so as we work to create shared perspective, aligned views on way ahead, within the interagency, it requires alignment around shared values and goals, and absolutely creating clarity, as I said, alignment on outcomes become critical to creating a shared sense of purpose between interagencies within governments and also between governments. But probably the key to all of it is communication, seeking avenues for communication, and often communication within respective governments can be more challenging than communications between governments. And so we've talked about trust, creating that trust environment for information to be shared and collaborated and acted on becomes critical to that culture of creating a shared sense of urgency around a shared goal. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a couple of more questions on my list, but I'm just going to break in with a question of my own to General Campbell and General Yoshida. General Campbell, just sparking on something that you said in your comments about the potential of autonomous systems to inject mass. That is obviously a particular issue for militaries that are more modest in size, and Australia being, I think, a case in point. High technology level, high capability level, but capacity challenges, and autonomous systems open up a potential to fill that gap. But it strikes me there may be a common challenge between Australia and Japan in terms of personnel and recruiting the human element of capability, that autonomous systems still require people to operate them. So in your experiences, is there a genuine economy that's been delivered yet through new technology in this system? Or is it, in some senses, a false economy if you still require more people in the loop to deliver that extra mass? If I could come to you, General Campbell, first, and General Yoshida afterwards.
Thanks, Euan. Really good point. That's one of the reasons why, in my remarks, I noted that increased autonomous systems presence may possibly reduce risk to people. Like that question of the risk to force, the potential of autonomous systems in terms of creating additional mass being something that adds rather than becomes a net negative when you look at the whole of life cost in personnel support and so forth. At the moment, we're in the early stages of serious autonomous systems. We all now see them in terms of drones in the air, drones at sea. We are starting to see land drone effects, but these are really first generation autonomy, and they require more people in terms of the support and the management of the autonomous system. But I think the direction has enormous potential. And it's really about the potential when we're talking third and fourth generation that is quite exciting, but we're not there yet.